Where are you from?
BBC.
Okay. Here's another beauty.
It's a good line. Impartial, free and fair.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. President.
Just like CNN, right?
On the travel ban, we could banter back and forth. On the travel ban, would you accept that that was a good example of the smooth running of government?
Yeah, I do. I do. Let me tell you about the travel.
Were there any mistakes in that?
Wait. I know who you are. Just wait. Let me tell you about the travel ban. We had a very smooth rollout of the travel ban, but we had a bad court. That's the only thing that was wrong with the travel ban. You had Delta with a massive problem with their computer system at the airports. You had some people that were put out there, brought by very nice buses, and they were put out at various locations. Despite that, the only problem that we had is we had a bad court. We had a court that gave us what I consider to be, with great respect, a very bad decision. Very bad for the safety and security of our country.
But your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
Well, that's true.
But
they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. Right. These were people. This was an actual, it happened a few days ago. And
they're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President,
that's
I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am.
Excuse me. That's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
Mr. President.
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way. Go ahead. Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts.
Well, I'm not a big fan of yours either. So
I understand.
To be honest.
So let me ask you a question, if I can. You repeatedly said
you are the best,
Mr. President. You repeatedly over the course of
just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people. Go ahead.
Mr. President, over the course of the last several days of the campaign, sir, at the end of the campaign, you repeatedly said that Americans need to fear Democrats. You said Democrats would unleash a wave of violent crime that endangers families everywhere. Why are you pitting Americans? Why are you pitting Americans against one another, sir?
Peter, what are you trying to be him?
No,
Peter,
I'm just asking the question.
Let me just tell you, very simple, because they're very weak on crime. Because they have often suggested, members and people within the Democrat Party at a high level have suggested getting rid of ICE, getting rid of law enforcement. That's not going to happen. Go ahead, take the. Well, I'll give you voters. I will give you voter suppression. You just have to sit down, please. Sit down. I didn't call you. I'll give you voter suppression. Take a look at the CNN polls, how inaccurate they were. That's called voter suppression. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm not responding. I'm responding to. Excuse me. I'm not responding to you. I'm talking to this gentleman. Would you please sit down? Excuse me. Would you please sit down? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now that the House of Representatives
very hostile. It's such a hostile media. It's so sad. You asked me about. No, you rudely interrupted him. Go ahead.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
President. When the allegations first surfaced, you initially said how important it was for Dr. Ford to testify and that you wanted to hear from her.
I do.
But
I wish it could have gone quicker.
Well, you also said that if what she said were as bad as she claims, surely her or her parents would have reported it. And just today you said you would
Well,
have
there is a
pushed
truth. I mean, there is a chance that her parents could have reported it 36 years ago.
So my question is...
It doesn't mean they had to report it because in some instances people keep it quiet. It's a very tough situation for a woman. There's no question about it. And in some cases they do report it. Frankly, had they reported it, it would have been pretty amazing, wouldn't it? But I guess they didn't. And that's okay. I'm not saying they had to report it because it's a very personal thing. It's a very big problem. There's no question about it. Go ahead.
Do you want to hear her story before?
I'd like to
you
hear
draw
her
a
story, yeah.
conclusion,
Well, we're
or
giving her
have you
time.
already made up your mind?
They would have given her time last week. This is the United States Senate. This is the most important position that a president can give out. I think we can say by far. I've actually heard it's the most important decision a president can make. I disagree with that. War and peace. I always say war and peace. And after that, Supreme Court justice, right? I look forward to hearing from her. We could have heard from her last week. We could have heard from her for a long time. It'll be interesting to hear what she has to say. Okay?
Let me follow up on Jim's question. Mr. President, let me follow up on Jim's question that I don't think we got an answer to.
Which one? Which question?
How have your personal experiences being accused by more than a dozen
I've been accused.
women of
I've been
sexual
accused.
misconduct?
False accusations.
Right.
Excuse me.
How have those...
I've been accused. And I was accused by, I believe it was 4 women. You can check with Sean Hannity. You can check with Fox because they covered it very strongly. Who got paid? Excuse me. I was accused by 4 or 5 women who got paid a lot of money to make up stories about me. We caught them, and the mainstream media refused to put it on television. They refused to even write about it. There were 4 women, and maybe more. I think the number is 4 or 5. But one had a mortgage paid off her house, $52,000. Another one had other things happen. And the one that reported it, I believe, was offered $750,000 to say bad things about me. And she's the one that reported it. This woman is incredible. She reported it instead of taking the money. So I've had numerous accusations about me.
Right.
They made false statements about me, knowing they were false. I never met them. I never met these people. And what did they do? What did they do? They took money in order to say bad things. I've had stories written in the New York Times front page about 4 women, the whole top center front page of the New York Times. I think it was 4 big pictures. I said, wow, that's a big thing. What's that? These were women that were quoted saying bad things about me. Not the worst things about me, but bad things. And I said, gee, that's too bad. I knew them a long time ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I said, that's too bad. I'm surprised at them. And then all of a sudden I see them on television, nothing to do with me. The next day or day later, they were incensed. They said, Donald Trump is a nice guy. We never said this. The New York Times did false reporting. They're fake news. And you know what? The New York Times would not report that their story was fake. These women said great things. Not only did they not say the bad stuff, they said great things about me. Front page. And those women, they're incredible women. They went on television, and they didn't want to, and I didn't ask them. And they said the New York Times made it up. They gave false quotes, and they went on a lot of shows. They were really incensed, and they couldn't believe it. That's why people know that a lot of the news is fake, and a lot of the people sitting here are fake. But 20% of them are wonderful, okay?
If I could just actually ask
ahead,
my
please.
question, Mr. Trump. You didn't let me ask my question.
You've
My
been asking a
was-
question for 10
No, you
minutes.
interrupted
Please
my
sit down.
question.
Please,
I'm
go ahead.
asking you,
Go
how
ahead.
did those impact your opinions on the allegations against
Well, it does
Judge
impact my opinion. You know why? Because I've had a lot of false charges made against me. I'm a very famous person, unfortunately. I've been a famous person for a long time. But I've had a lot of false charges made against me, really false charges. I know friends that have had false charges. People want fame, they want money, they want whatever. So when I see it, I view it differently than somebody sitting home watching television where they say, oh, Judge Kavanaugh, this or that. It's happened to me many times. I've had many false charges. I had a woman sitting in an airplane, and I attacked her while people were coming onto the plane, and I have a #1 bestseller out. I mean, it was a total phony story. There are many of them. So when you say, does it affect me in terms of my thinking with respect to Judge Kavanaugh? Absolutely, because I've had it many times. And if the news would have reported these 4 people, I couldn't believe it. When I heard that they caught these 4 people, I said, wow, that's a big story. And it was for Fox. Okay. I think it was disgraceful that the intelligence agencies allowed any information that turned out to be so false and fake out. I think it's a disgrace. And I say that, and that's something that Nazi Germany would have done and did do. I think it's a disgrace. That information that was false and fake and never happened got released to the public. As far as BuzzFeed, which is a failing pile of garbage, writing it, I think they're going to suffer the consequences. They already are. And as far as CNN going out of their way to build it up, and by the way, we just found out I was coming down. Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen is a very talented lawyer. He's a good lawyer in my firm. It was just reported that it wasn't this Michael Cohen they were talking about. So all night long, it's Michael Cohen. I said, I want to see your passport. He brings his passport to my office. I say, hey, wait a minute. He didn't leave the country. He wasn't out of the country. They had Michael Cohen of the Trump Organization was in Prague. It turned out to be a different Michael Cohen. It's a disgrace what took place. It's a disgrace. And I think they ought to apologize to start with Michael Cohen. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, not you. Not you. Your organization's terrible. Your organization's terrible. Let's go. Go ahead. Quiet. Go ahead. She's asking a question. Don't be rude. Don't be rude. Don't be rude. No, I'm not going to give you a question. I'm not going to give you a question. You are fake news. Go ahead. Go ahead.